The Blue Bloods are finally back, and we are here to continue to fill your great void from sports. We start the episode off by discussing what our expectations are for projected Crimson Tide quarterback Mac Jones, and then we debate which new head coach in college football will have the most success at their new program. We then give you guys our biggest potential steals in the upcoming NFL draft, and we wrap up this packed episode with a new segment called March Sadness, where we talk about the pay for play scandal that rocked college basketball and how it could affect college football and why we haven't really seen a scandal like this in college football. We have a packed episode, so let's kick it off. So we're going to start off with Mac Jones and the Alabama Crimson Tide. So the Tua Tagovailoa reign is now over in Tuscaloosa, and Mac Jones is projected to fill the void left by probably arguably the best quarterback in Crimson Tide history. Mac Jones will still have projected competition from Bryce Young, incoming five-star, and Tua's little brother Talua. But with spring practices being canceled and their projections calling for a shortened summer camp and fall camp, we're confident that Jones will most likely be the starter for the Crimson Tide moving forward into the season. Jones stepped into the starting role when Tagovailoa caught the injury bug and still went 3-1 as a starter. And he played awfully well in his time for the Crimson Tide last season. So questions do surround what is Jones' potential and what will his development, arc look like, and how will that affect the Tide this season? So Brandon, what do you expect from Mac Jones this season, and where do you see his floor or ceiling being this upcoming season and just throughout his career in Tuscaloosa?
It's so hard to say right now because what have we seen out of Mac Jones so far? We saw his partial season this year when Tua went down with his injury, and we saw him a little bit in 2018, not too much. He was a true freshman then. Far less. I mean, we saw 13 passing attempts. He basically went in at the end of games when Alabama was winning. But this past season, what do we see out of him? We saw. Who did they even play when he was there when he had to start games like Arkansas and it
Yeah.
was it was what
Yeah, he
it
I,
was
he
like
well he played part of the Mississippi State game. He played against, I think, Louisiana Monroe this year. He played
Tennessee,
he played
part of
actually,
Tennessee.
yeah, part of Tennessee, but his starts were Arkansas, Louisiana Monroe, Auburn, and Michigan. So I mean, two of those starts are pretty big.
Right. And I mean what we did see out of him this year was pretty impressive. I mean he was close to a 70% completion rate. He was at 68, almost 69%. That's pretty nice. But 1,500 yards passing in these games that he played. I mean that's very impressive for the short amount of time that he actually played. Uh, he ended off the season with 14 completions, 3 interceptions. I mean, we can go back all the way to high school. We can look at his recruiting. I mean, he came out of high school as a 3-star recruit. How he ended up on scholarship at Alabama, great question. But I mean, he's proved to everybody that he is. He is an SEC caliber quarterback, and I think he's going to do fairly well next year. Obviously, there's no way of really knowing how he's going to perform. I mean, like I said, we saw a few starts out of him this past season when Tua went down with injury, but besides that, I mean, we haven't seen this guy lead this Alabama football team because even when he was going out of the field as a starting quarterback this past season, was he the leader on the field? I wouldn't say he was. Uh, but really, what do I think he can do with this Alabama team? I think it's tough. I'd say the ceiling is pretty high. I mean, it's Alabama. He's still playing for Nick Saban, and this defense next year is going to be phenomenal. So I think this Alabama team has a chance to make it back to the playoff. Where do I say their floor is? I mean, it's a pretty high floor. I'd say the absolute floor for this Alabama team this year would be like 8-4. I can't see them losing more than 4 games this next year.
And that's probably a stretch, I would hope.
I mean, they could have me at quarterback out of next year, and they'd probably go 8-4. That's what I mean. It would be tough.
No, I mean, I'd completely agree with you on that. I mean, in my opinion, though, Jones probably has bigger shoes to fill than just about anyone in the country. Maybe, outside of Miles Brennan at LSU. But Tua is probably I would say, one of the most beloved players in Alabama history, and he's set just countless records that I don't think even Bama fans saw being broken or even set. But my biggest question for Jones moving forward is how will he deal with the critics if things go south? Um, I don't know how many of you guys know this, but Bryce Young is really, really good. And I think he's probably the most hyped quarterback recruit that Alabama's ever had. I mean, you think back, I mean, Alabama won a lot of national championships with A.J. McCarron, Greg McElroy, Coker, and, all these players. I mean, Tua was really it was probably one of the bigger recruits that they got. And Bryce Young was was the number 2 player in the 247 composite. I mean, and I'm really
Yeah, I mean,
worried.
he's the third highest recruit they've ever had, and he's the highest quarterback they've ever had by a lot. I mean,
Yeah, it's not even close.
besides Brody Croyle, Brody Croyle was, I mean, I mean,
We
he
saw
played
how that
what?
worked out.
Yeah. So I mean, he is the highest by far.
Yeah, and what I'm worried about is, I mean, Brandon, would you say Alabama fans are the most understanding when a player doesn't play well and it costs them a
Oh
game or
my
two?
God. No, yeah, they're very understanding about everything in life.
I
Yeah.
mean, so what happens? We do have no spring practices. We probably won't have many summer practices or workout programs. And who knows how much fall practice these players are going to get. And what happens if Bama starts slow and Mac Jones isn't performing at the level that these fans have set for him? I mean, I don't think it's going to be long before fans start to chant for Bryce Young to get a shot at quarterback. I mean,
Dude, there's already I mean, the fact is, there's already people begging for Bryce
yeah,
Young to
that's
see
true.
playing time.
That's true.
So I mean, they've already counted Mac Jones out before seeing what he has.
And I mean, look at how quick they turned on Jalen Hurts. If you think
Oh
you
my
have
goodness.
goodwill built up and Jalen Hurts can get benched, I'm not feeling very, very confident about, you know, for the Bama fans to give you a grace period. I don't think that's happening. I mean, Alabama hasn't lost a lot recently. They're not used to it. But I think Jones has 2 to 3 huge advantages over other quarterbacks, and it's experience and talent around him to work with. I mean, it's not hard to really succeed in this system when you can hand the ball off to Najee Harris and you're throwing to Jalen Waddle and Javante Smith. And then your offensive line is led by Alex Leatherwood, which might be the best offensive tackle in the country. I
Right.
mean, that's a huge, huge advantage. And, you know, for me, Alabama has one of the most stacked offenses in the country. I would rank it right behind maybe Clemson, Ohio State. Uh, and for experience, yeah, that sounds like a stretch there for, someone who hasn't really started a full season. But I mean, he got a taste of some big environments, big games. I mean, going on the road to Auburn to play in the Iron Bowl with a college football playoff appearance on the line and an Auburn team with nothing to lose. Then a Citrus Bowl game where Jim Harbaugh, in my opinion, is playing for some respect. And really and truly, outside of those 2 pick sixes that he threw in the Iron Bowl, he was those 2 pick sixes away from leading Alabama to probably a playoff berth. Because I think if Alabama beats Auburn, they get in over Oklahoma. And
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that was even an argument. I mean, people were counting that as fact before that game.
that's true.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna be definitely an interesting road that Mac Jones is heading down for this next season.
Yeah. There's one thing I think people overlook, though, when it comes to Alabama and quarterbacks. I think they totally overlooked the system that Nick Saban, even though he's the defensive coach, has really implemented to make quarterbacks successful. And the key is give it to the talent and stay out of the way. Nick Saban
Right.
knows this team is a well-oiled machine. If you're a quarterback at Bama, your keys are no interceptions, escape the pocket when needed, and don't take a sack, and be somewhat accurate. Those 3 things, you're probably going to win just based on that defense and the talent that if you get the ball in the hands of Jalen Waddle, odds are he might take it for a touchdown every single time you give it to him. We saw that at Auburn. He had 4 touchdowns. And
Right.
That's been the formula for years since Nick. I mean, even that was even the formula at LSU for Nick Saban. I mean, Jamarcus Russell was good, but like, it was just Jamarcus. Please let's not throw 2 interceptions this game. And I think that's what made Tua so scary in this offense is because he had real quarterback talent, and it really and truly it was almost telling the talent around Tua not to screw it up for him. And I think that's why Bryce Young has so much hype behind him because he has that same talent. I mean, you look at the quarterbacks that Saban's won with: AJ McCarron, Blake Sims, Jake Coker, Greg McElroy. I mean, to me, not elite players, not elite quarterbacks. And but the thing was, they all they had to do was not make mistakes. I mean, like you said, Brandon, you could be the quarterback. They probably still go 8-4 because I mean, you look back through history. It's not hard to hand the ball to Derrick Henry and let him destroy defenses. It's not hard to throw it up and let Amari Cooper or Jerry Jeudy take off and embarrass cornerbacks and defenses. The formula works and it works well. And I think Jones has an outstanding year, and it's only because why would he not?
Right. I mean, and like I said, I'll reiterate this point. As much as I like to make fun of Alabama, make fun of their fans, you are a quarterback at the University of Alabama. Like Zach said, Nick Saban can win with Greg McElroy. He can win with AJ McCarron. He can win with Jake Coker. He can win with Mac Jones. And so this next season is going to be, uh, I like to say, interesting. It's probably going to be a very good season in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Oh yeah, because I mean, so if you're a defensive coordinator, just put yourself in any defensive coordinator's shoes. Would you rather watch Najee Harris, abuse your front seven and hurdle cornerbacks at full stride, or would you rather hope Mac Jones makes another mistake and throws a pick six? I'm going with Mac Jones has to beat us rather than Najee Harris, take someone's head off running the ball down the field.
Right. I mean, 10 times out of 10.
Every single time. But
Yeah.
we're going to go ahead and move on here, and we're going to talk a little bit of projections going into next season, but it's for new coaches. So the coaching carousel has been settled. Most coaches know where they'll be coaching for the 2020 season, and we saw multiple big names move to new programs. I mean, this includes Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin both heading to Mississippi and making the Egg Bowl one of the most anticipated matchups of the year. You also have Mike Norvell headed to Florida State from Memphis. And a big one is Dave Aranda leaving LSU to take his talents to Baylor. But this season, I think, in my opinion, had one of the most memorable coaching carousels because of all these big names that moved. And the expectations are mixed. This is also due to the COVID-19 outbreak that has made this next season super difficult for new coaches at programs. But looking ahead, I think there are a lot of high expectations. I don't think Baylor expects Aranda to come in and lose a lot. I think Mississippi State really likes what they got in Mike Leach. So, Brandon, which coach at a new program do you think will be the best fit and have the most success at their new school?
So I was going to break it down to a few, but do you want to know who I think is the best fit at that school? I'd go with Mr. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss because when you
I
think Ole
like it.
Miss, go ahead and describe the type of person that would be attending the University of Mississippi, someone who would be a fan of that program. I mean, you're looking at Lane Kiffin. I mean, he's look in the mirror. I mean, that's exactly who it is. And why do I think that he can do well at Ole Miss? Well, because he's already proven that he can be a successful coach. Before he went to coach under Nick Saban at Alabama, where he had fairly good success, it was just the University of Alabama. That's why he moved on to Florida Atlantic. After what happened there. Um, but I mean, we look and see what he did, what he's done since the beginning of his career. I mean, in 2009, he started out his coaching career at Tennessee, and how did he do, Zach? He went 7-6, made a bowl game with. I mean, it's not a great showing by him, but it was his first year as a head coach ever.
It was
He
also an
moves on to
average
US.
roster. Average roster.
Right, right, absolutely. He moves on to USC after that, and what does he do? He goes 8-5 in his first season, 10-2 in his second season. That's with a 2011 USC team. So, it's the 2010s USC program. After that, he goes 7-6. Then the next year in 2013, that's when he's fired. He starts out 3-2. After that, he goes to Alabama, coaches there. We know the success of Alabama between 2014 and 2016. I don't even think I have to highlight that. Then he moves on to Florida Atlantic. And what does he do with his Florida Atlantic team? He goes 11-3 twice out of 3 years. He wins the Booker Raton Bowl both times. And now he's at the University of Mississippi. He's at Ole Miss. He's back in SEC country. We've already talked about head coaches that can recruit on this show. We've talked about the Kirby Smarts of the world. I don't even know how we didn't bring up Lane Kiffin there. If Lane Kiffin shows up to your house, recruits you, you think you're not going to the school that he's recruiting you to go to? Seriously? I mean, he's going to show you a good time. Am I right? I think a player will be hard pressed to not be swayed by Lane Kiffin showing up to their home and taking them maybe on the best night they've ever had in their 18 years on this earth. I don't know. I just think that big things are in store for Lane Kiffin here at Ole Miss. I think that he's finally at a program where he can grow along with the program. This Ole Miss program isn't in a great spot right now, but I think that he has an opportunity to grow with this program.
Yeah, I don't mind that pick. I didn't go with Kiffin or Leach, mainly because I'm skeptical of what they both can do as, mainstays as SEC coaches. And Kiffin got the advantage of being in the SEC East last time. The SEC West is stacked. I mean, outside of Arkansas, every single team is a real contender. I mean, Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher is going to be one heck of a combination. They're going to be tough to beat every single game. Auburn, Gus Malzahn, you've seen the success they've had over the years. LSU just came off a national championship with Coach O. Alabama's Alabama. I got you there. I totally agree. But I mean, are you really? And then you got to look across the state. Lane Kiffin's looking at Mike Leach, and Mike Leach is looking at Lane Kiffin, and that's going to be a shootout every single year. So I'm going to go with an unconventional one, and mine's going to be Mike Norvell at Florida State. And for me, this was an obvious pick, but my number 2 was going to be Dave Aranda at Baylor. But at the same time, Baylor's kind of it's a toss-up to me. I think you have to have a special relationship with that community, a special relationship with that area to really succeed. And I'm questioning whether Dave Aranda has that or not. But I think Dave Aranda has the talent to do big things. But when you look at Norvell, I mean, he comes from Memphis after winning 3 straight division titles in an AAC championship and even got Memphis to a New Year's Six Bowl this season. He specializes in offensive schemes. He's an offensive guru, an elite recruiter, and he can develop talent. And I want to focus on that. So developing talent has been a thing that is where Florida State has struggled recently. Talent development has been the biggest problem since the end of Jimbo Fisher's reign in Tallahassee. I mean, they always recruit 4 or 5-star talent, and even the best 3 stars come there. They're in one of the most talent-rich states in the country. And, Willie Taggart, you guys know our feelings on Willie Taggart. And Jimbo Fisher lost control of the program there toward the end. And Norvell solves all these issues that Florida State has had in the past. He built an outstanding culture at Memphis. Those kids played hard every single down, every single game, regardless of what weekend it was. And these weren't 5 stars stepping into this program. This was 2 and 3 stars, kids that the big programs didn't want. Norvell took them in and made them successful. I mean, he develops potential NFL talent. Antonio Gibson is going to be drafted this year. Next year, Kenneth Gainwell is probably going to be drafted. I mean, there's been multiple Memphis players that have been successful at the next level, and he's coached at places that have also produced NFL talent. Another big thing, Norvell has the youth to relate to recruits, and it also prevents negative recruiting. We see negative recruiting against people like Nick Saban. It happened to Joe Paterno and Bobby Bowden. I mean, once you start getting up there in age, other programs are like, hey, this guy's going to retire soon, so you need to come play for me because I'll be here the whole time you're here. And Norvell doesn't have that problem. I mean, he has bright eyes, big goals on the horizon for Florida State, and kids are going to want to play in his offensive system. They saw that SMU Memphis game where they were just throwing back points. They saw the Penn State Memphis game, which was one of the best bowl games of the season. And I mean, Florida State's already a top destination for recruits, and now you have a good, young, offensive-minded coach that seems to have success wherever he goes. And I think this Norval hire is one of the more underrated hires and is overlooked due to Sweeney's dominance in the ACC, and people think that that's going to get in the way.
Yeah, and I like that pick. I really do. I think that if anyone could come to this Florida State program and turn it around, or any available coach could come to this Florida State program and turn it around, Norval is a great choice for that. I think he's a good fit there, like you said. I'm not going to go on too much further about that. But there were a couple honorable mentions here, and I'd like to take the time to at least mention them. I don't know where you were planning on going with this, Zach, but I mean, you already mentioned Mike Leach. I think Mike Leach will be a good fit at Mississippi State. It's going to be tough to see. I agree with what you said about Lane Kiffin. They are playing in the SEC West, and where has Mike Leach been before? Well, he's been in the Big 12 and he's been in the Pac-12. I think there's a little bit of a difference between those two conferences and the SEC West. Dave Aranda, as much as I would love to say he's going to do a great job at Baylor, and I do think he will, I think there's a couple question marks there. He's never been a head coach before. This is his first time in his life being a head coach in college, anyway. Um, as a matter of fact, I think the only other head coaching job he's ever had was for a high school a junior varsity team. So to see him make this jump from of course he was an associate head coach at LSU. But to see him make this jump from coordinator to head coach is going to be an interesting one. I think that he has it in him, but I don't know that for a fact yet. Another coach I like to keep an eye on, and I don't have big expectations for him, but it's always fun to bring his name up, is Greg Schiano, the Schiano man, returning to Rutgers.
Schiano man?
Yeah, play me a song, you're the Schiano man. But here he is. He, we know what he did with Rutgers. In 2006, he went 11-2. Of course, I mean that's the year that whenever anyone likes to bash him, people will be like, "Oh yeah, but do you remember that 2006 Rutgers team?" It doesn't matter. Do you remember every other Rutgers team? He went 2-9. He went 1-11. He went 4-7, 4-8. He went 9-4 in his last year. I guess that's decent. But that was his second best season ever. So. Am I too hyped on him? No, but I feel like there was going to be at least one person who's like, oh, why didn't you bring up Greg Schiano? So here's your Greg Schiano segment, I guess.
I mean, I don't like Greg. I mean, I think it was the best hire for Rutgers, and he can only go up. I mean, Rutgers literally is a borderline D1 school when it comes to football at this point. So I don't
Right.
mind them hiring it, but I mean, I'm sticking with Norval. I mean, everyone else, it's kind of boom or bust for me. I mean, to be honest, Mike Leach's system, is it going to work in the SEC? We don't know. I mean, those defenses he put up at Washington State, is it going to work in the SEC? Uh,
No.
Lane Kiffin, it depends on who hires as his defensive coordinator. One underrated one, if we had to go with an underrated one, I'm going with Sam Pittman at Arkansas. And
Okay.
yeah, I said everyone's boom and bust. This is the ultimate boomer bust. He's one heck of a recruiter. He worked in Kirby Smart's, system under Kirby Smart, and he did big things with that offense and offensive line. I mean, if thinking back, Brandon, I mean, how many years in a row has Georgia had a top offensive lineman prospect enter the NFL draft?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, the only thing I'm worried about, I think it was the same concern you have with the Randas, who's never been a head coach. And to take on Arkansas, which is probably out of these programs and outside of Rutgers, out of the big name programs, I'm not talking about like Old Dominion. I mean, out of like the big name programs that have new coaches, I think Arkansas is probably the biggest rebuild. Arkansas hasn't been
Yeah.
good in a long, long time. And I think Sam Pittman's got his hands full, but we saw Sam Pittman's, recruiting ability when he stepped into Arkansas late and still made a strong push late in this past recruiting cycle and landed a lot of big recruits a lot of people weren't expecting. So I think if I had to pick an under one, Sam Pittman is the one that I would point out that, like, hey, don't be surprised if Arkansas starts, upsetting some teams, which as two guys that host a podcast that both are biggest fans of SEC West programs, that's probably not what either of us hope or want to hear.
No, absolutely not.
Can you imagine
And
if LSU loses to Arkansas this year?
Jeez, dude, I don't know what I'll do if the Golden Boot goes to Fayetteville. It'll be a bad year.
When's
I'll
the
be
last time
cursed for the
Arkansas
next.
beat LSU?
No, dude, they do it all the time. So I can't
Oh, that's
remember
tough.
exactly.
That's
Dude,
tough.
they do. It's nuts. I mean, we can go back to I think it was what was it? It was '07 the last time LSU won or before this season. The last time they won a national championship and Arkansas beat them, their last game of the
Well,
season, and they still
to be
made it to the
fair,
national championship.
that's when Arkansas was really, really good. I mean, they had Darren McFadden, and they had Felix Jones. Gus Malzahn was the offensive coordinator. I mean, that team was stacked.
Right. But I mean, it's just, it's besides this season, LSU's never had, uh, they don't have those undefeated seasons where they go to the national championship, they're undefeated. They don't have those. They always lose a game. Um, uh, in Arkansas is usually the one that'll sneak up on them somehow. So it's just, that's always a big question mark. Was I scared of LSU playing Arkansas this season? Yeah, just a little bit. Uh, but yeah, it happens. I'll go ahead and cap off this segment, as long as you don't have anything else to say, with another underrated hire, in my opinion. One that I don't think, yeah, I haven't heard anyone really talk about. And that's who Washington State has chosen to replace Mike Leach with. Nick Rolovich. He was a head coach at Hawaii before this, and everyone knows how high I am on Hawaii. Obviously, he was there. He was a quarterback for them, I believe, in the early 2000s. Anyway, he's another offensive minded guy. And if you had to choose someone similar to Mike Leach, someone with a similar style offense to Mike Leach, and even a similar personality, really, go watch the tapes on Nick Rolovich, and you might have Mike Leach Jr. Right there. I think he has the potential to do decent things in this Pac-12 North division.
Yeah, I like it. I'm not gonna lie. I really don't have an opinion on that one. It could work. I think Washington State is just going to be Washington State. They're going to be that middle of the Pac-12 team, and I think that's about their height, unless something, you know, they get lucky with getting someone like Joe Burrow that comes out of nowhere or something like that. I think they're just going to be Washington State. So we're going to go ahead, move on to another segment here, and we're going to talk more NFL draft stuff. NFL draft approaching extremely quickly, scheduled to begin on the 23rd of this month. And I think all sports fans are excited since we literally have had zero sports to follow in multiple weeks now. There always seems to be players that scouts, GMs, fans overlook going into the draft. These players shock the world and become stars in the NFL. I mean, some of these players include Russell Wilson in the third round, Shannon Sharp in the seventh, Brady in the sixth, Richard Sherman in the fifth round. So it's inevitable that there are going to be some late round players in this draft that will be much more valuable than their selection number. Brandon, who are your top two players that you project as the biggest or, just steals in general in this year's draft?
I'll go ahead and start this one out. Everyone knows me. Everyone knows I'm an offense guy. Defense, meh, whatever. But I am actually going to start out my list with a defensive player this time. I've got a defensive end from Utah, in Bradley Anae, as a big steal in this year's draft. Most mock drafts I've seen have him going in the third, fourth round. Um, and I really think that is, I think that if you can get him in the third round, that's a value pick because this guy really, he's early second round talent, in my opinion. Um, over his career, he's had 40 tackles for loss at Utah. Just this past season alone, he had 41 total tackles. His junior season, he had 47. Um, Sacks, this year he had 13 sacks. 7.5 the year before that, seven his sophomore year. Uh, this guy is a guy that's going to beat offensive linemen off the ball. He's a strong guy. He's very fast, very quick. So I would love to have him on my defensive line personally. Yeah, with my team that I coach. I'd love to have Bradley Anae. I was just impressed by everything this guy showed us at the Senior Bowl this season. You look back through his numbers. I said 7.5 sacks. That was he led the Pac-12 in sacks his junior season. Um, he's the kind of guy that you want on your defensive line. He's going to blow past this offensive lines in the NFL. I think that, I mean, if you can get him even late second round, that's still a value. I truly do think that he is early second round talent. Um, and I just don't see anyone taking him that early. Uh, Zach, I'm going to go ahead and let you go on. That way I don't just keep rambling like I am. I feel like I'm in a weird headspace. So go ahead and take this one over.
Good, good. In case you guys need to know, Bradley and A dominated the Senior Bowl. Go check out our episode on that. It was like what 40 episodes ago. Just
Dude,
ridiculous.
he made Jalen Hurts look like a punk.
He made the offensive tackles that he faced look like punks. I mean, he was throwing grown men to the ground. And I like that pick. I didn't pick him because I really think a team's going to reach for him early. I really do. I have a feeling he's not going to be first round. I can see him going second round. Uh, but my first pick, the latest 7 round mock draft I checked. He's going to the Patriots in the 7th round, and this is Antonio Gibson, running back, wide receiver out of Memphis. We've highlighted him on the podcast before, but for our newer listeners, and in case you forgot over the months, Gibson played a little bit of both running back, wide receiver, kick returner, punt returner for Memphis, and he's got blazing 4.39, 4.4 speed. But he also is 230 pounds, which makes him one of the more physical running backs, wide receivers that we're seeing coming out of the draft. I think if he gets to the Patriots, watch out. Holy crap, that would be dangerous. But I think his stock's low due to his 2 years in Memphis because he only really had 1 year of production. So scouts and GMs and everything are like, well, why don't we see 4 years of film like we see on some people? And I think they're a little bit skeptical to take him. And but personally, I think he's dynamic enough to really specialize on in the return game for a team early. But as his career goes along, I can see him developing as a true weapon and in a perfect offensive system, a slot slash receiving back. So I don't think he's an every down back. I think this guy can play every down, but just not a true tailback position. Uh, for my two players, I like to do pro comparisons just to kind of give you guys an idea of where I'm standing on a player. And even though he's bigger than this guy, I think he models this guy in his game and his explosiveness and his ability as a player, and that's Darren Sproles. Uh, Darren Sproles was a later round pick too. People question, can we really draft a guy that's 5'9"? Well, Gibson's like about 6 foot, so he's bigger than Sproles and more physical, but he has the same quickness, explosiveness, ability to catch and make plays out in open space. And I think a team could use Gibson like, various teams throughout Sproles' career used him. I think he'll fit in just about any system. It's just some systems he's better as a slot, other systems he's better as a running back. So I think Gibson for a 7th round pick, I value him as more of a 2nd round pick. So I'm seeing something some scouts are not, but I think in the long run I'm going to be proved right here, and I think Antonio Gibson is going to make some team extremely happy in this late, in between 6th, 7th round.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. Um, I'll go ahead and continue on to my second player, uh, and it's quarterback. Everyone knows I love quarterbacks. Big offense guy over
You and these
here.
quarterbacks.
No need to reiterate that. But there is a quarterback I absolutely fell in love with this off season, even this past season. I mean, just seeing him air the ball out the way he did, and that's Anthony Gordon. We've talked about him before on here. He had 2 full seasons, or not 2 full seasons. He had 2 seasons in college that he played. He played his junior and senior seasons. Um, Obviously, he backed up Gardner Minshew at Washington State his junior season, and then this past season, we saw what he can do with the ball. I mean, he passed for 5,579 yards. He had a 72 completion rate at that, and I mean, it's insane. He had 689 attempts for 493 receptions this year, 48 touchdowns, and that's not in the college football playoff. So, going to the college football playoff, everyone knows I love Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow didn't have these kind of numbers. He did not have 48 touchdowns. And not only that, but I mean, 48 touchdowns. I mean, you talk that many touchdowns, and he only had 16 interceptions. I understand that's a big number, But when you're throwing 48 touchdowns, I think you can kind of, you can kind of hedge that a little bit. Um, this guy has a big arm, and honestly, I haven't even seen him. I've been looking through these mock drafts, and a lot of these drafts don't even have him going until fourth, fifth, sixth round. And so I think that if you can get this guy there, it is a huge, huge, huge value. Um, is that to say he's going to be a starter right off the bat? No. I'm not going to get crazy here. But you let him sit behind a veteran for a season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons. Let him learn about that NFL offense that you're running, and then you stick him in there. I think that he can be a great quarterback for seasons to come.
I mean, I like the pick. I tried not to be too redundant. I figured you were going with Anthony Gordon here. I like Anthony Gordon. But in case you guys didn't know this, didn't check it out on our Instagram or social media, Brandon had Anthony Gordon as his fourth rated quarterback in this class. I mean,
Right.
he was above Jordan Love for Brandon here. So that's pretty stout if you ask me. And I
Like
think
Jordan
Anthony
Love has
Gordon.
big hands, but that's about it.
That's true. Joe Burrow did not. LSU, please make
No,
that
no.
statue accurate. Anyway, I like Anthony Gordon. I think I agree with you. He's going to have to sit behind somebody. I think an interesting spot might be the Steelers. I mean, sit him behind Ben
Yeah,
Roethlisberger. I
yeah,
like
I can
that. I mean,
definitely
he
see
would
that.
have Juju Smith-Schuster and James Conner. All these the Steelers are always a great franchise. So I think Steelers look later round for them. I think the Patriots will probably already get a quarterback before they get down to Anthony Gordon. I mean, who I think this when you get to the later rounds, these quarterbacks are very open to many teams because a lot of teams are looking for backups. But I think Anthony Gordon is better than a backup, in my personal opinion. But kind of finish this segment off. My last pick, also projected by CBS to be a seventh round pick. My bad. And that's Quintez Cephas, wide receiver out of
Okay.
Wisconsin. I went with two wide receivers here. It just happened to be like that, but Cephas is an extremely interesting prospect to me because he has all the potential, but he's not completely developed yet, which is what you look for in these later round picks. Uh, Teams are questioning his character a little bit. He did have a sexual assault accusation, but was acquitted. But as we know, NFL teams take that extremely seriously. But at the same time, I mean, this guy is 202 pounds, 6'1", can go up and get balls when needed. I think he still projects as a slot wide receiver 2-3 type prospect. But I think teams can use him in specialized scenarios, especially goal line scenarios. I think all the raw tools are there for something extremely special. And something to note, Jeff Okuda, projected number 3 pick in the draft to the Lions from out of Ohio State. He called Quintez Cephas his most difficult matchup of the season. That's big time praise from a big time player. Jeff Okuda played against Clemson this year. I mean, played against Michigan. I mean, they played some big teams, and for Quintez Cephas to get that type of praise from an elite player like Okuda, big time thing. So my pro comparison for Cephas is Nelson Aguilar. I think he projects as a long-time starter in the league. Will he be a star? No, but you don't need these guys in the sixth, seventh round to become stars. Not everyone can pick up the next Tom Brady or Shannon Sharp that's going to be Hall of Famers in these late rounds. I mean, you get a Nelson Aguilar out of the seventh round, I think you have to be pleased as a franchise because you have a wide receiver spot that's filled for 10, 11 years down the road.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He's going to be a great wide receiver. Both of your picks really are. Uh, Here's one thing, and I don't know if you want to do this. This is just kind of off the dome, guys.
Let's do it.
Here's a little inside action with the Blue Bloods. Do you want to do the opposite of exactly what we're doing? Somebody who might be taken too early in this draft that we think might not need to be taken that early.
Let's do it. I'm all for this.
I've got my player, man. Do you have
Go
anybody
ahead.
in mind?
Yeah, go ahead. You go first.
Oh my God, let's talk about it. Mekhi Becton out of Louisville. Dude, have you seen these headlines that are saying his stock's rising? Here's one right here saying that the Giants are interested in him with their fourth overall pick. If you draft this kid fourth overall, it would, listen, if the Giants are that committed to their brand, you got to respect it in a way. But goodness, man, you cannot draft this guy at fourth overall in this draft. he can't be the first O lineman off the board, right?
I mean,
I
I don't.
mean, I get it. He is huge. He is fast, but can he play? I mean,
Yes, he
we
can.
saw him play
He
at
he can
Louisville.
play. He can play. I'm
He
telling you,
can
man.
play. He can play, but do you think he's game ready right this second? Do you think he's fourth overall good?
I mean, no, no, no. I mean, I've released my mock draft. I don't have him going fourth overall. So I'm not
Yeah,
saying he should go. I don't. I have him going in the first round, but I don't have him going fourth.
I don't know. Honestly, I think you might even have him overrated. I think he can be developed into something great, but if he goes to the wrong team, he might
Uh,
not see action. He or
I
if he does see action, he's going to get bullied.
I have him going 18th
Oh my goodness,
to the
Zach, we
Dolphins.
need to. You were just hopeful for that, actually. I think,
No, so
and I think the
I
Dolphins are a team that could develop him. I really do. I honestly think that with Coach Flores, I think that they could develop him.
I mean, so he's my fourth offensive tackle off the board. So I mean, it's fourth. He's behind Andrew Thomas, Tristan Wirfs, and Jedrick Willis Jr. out of Alabama.
I mean, you and I both had him, or at least I did in our top five offensive tackles.
Yeah,
I get that, but to see this guy go, I mean, I think what threw me for a loop was just the giant was just that were the articles that I'm seeing. Oh, he could go fourth. Oh, he can he go at 13 to the 49ers? No, I don't think he should go that high. I mean,
I didn't.
I don't know.
Why would the? I don't. Okay. I mean, I read
That's
up
just
on
another article. I don't know.
I read up on this stuff. The 49ers' biggest need is definitely not offensive tackle. They're not going
Well,
off. They're not going off for offense in this draft. I mean, both of
I'm
the picks I have in my mock draft are going defense all the way.
all right. So who
Uh,
would you go with here? Who do you think's a little bit
uh,
overrated here?
it's so. Are
It's
we
tough.
doing? Are we doing like overrated in terms of they're gonna drop, or they're just gonna be taken too high regardless?
Someone who's going to get taken too high regardless.
Ooh. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit controversial here, especially with Brandon.
Don't do this to me. No.
I have this guy going 16th in the draft, and the only reason I'm saying it's risky, he has a lot of potential. He could easily be the best defensive player in the draft, but I also think he could be the biggest bust, and that's Kayvon Chason.
Clayvon
And
Chason, yes, sir.
Uh, he edge player. He also could project as an outside linebacker, whatever. I mean, I think he is really, really explosive on his first step. He has great hand techniques, but he seemed to be a risky pick due to his injury history. I don't think he was the best even on. I don't think he was a top three player on LSU's defense this past year. I think a team's going to reach for him. I mean, for me, he's the second LSU player going in the first round for me, and it's just because I think a team is going to take a risk on him because of the potential. I mean, I think it's ridiculous that he's going to go in front of Grant Delpit or Justin Jefferson or Patrick Queen, but I really, really, really think he's. I don't. I'm not sold on him as a player. And another player I think is going to drop as well is T. Higgins. I think he is really, really good. I'm really high on him, but from everything I'm hearing, and the teams seem to be really high on other wide receivers, and I think T. Higgins drops in this draft as well.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely see T Higgins dropping, which I don't know. A lot of people agree with. A lot of people think that he is not as good of a wide receiver as I think he is, as a lot of people might think he is. Um, and that's just that blindsided me,
So,
honestly.
so,
Yeah,
so
I didn't think anyone. Go ahead.
no, no. So since we're going off the dome, I have to ask you, since we're talking about wide receivers in the draft, I forgot what the exact name is. Someone on the NFL Network. He didn't have Jerry Judy in his top five wide receivers.
That's insane.
I mean,
That's how. How do you not have Jerry Judy in your top five? He
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 has CD.
he's
He
supposed
has
to
CD.
go.
He has CD Lamb at one.
Man,
at T. Higgins at 2, Justin Jefferson at 3. He had KJ Hamler at 4. I forget who's at 5. I think it was the kid from Colorado. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he did not have Jerry Jeudy in his top 5 wide receivers. And I'm hoping I saw it today, but I think it was posted before. I'm hoping it's just a early April Fool's joke, but part of me feels like it's not because I feel like there's a lot of people reaching for hot takes right now, and so since there's no sports, and I don't think in any world you could say that Jerry Jeudy is not a top 5 wide receiver in this draft.
No, dude, he's the in my opinion, I think he's the best wide receiver in the draft, right?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think he is, and I think he has the
Yeah,
potential to be the best player in the draft.
that's true. Yeah.
I really do. And so I got to know, as an LSU fan, a lot of our listeners, may or may not have seen. I mean, do you hate the pick of Chasen as my overrated player, or do you understand? Like, well, what's your take on it? Like, and what do you think his potential is in the NFL?
It's tough to say. I think that he's the kind of player that can get things done, especially that pick. Not only can he get things done on the field, he can get things done off the field. He's a real locker room guy. Everything I've read about him, everything I've heard
I
about
think
him.
that's personally why I think he's going to go high. Is because I think when you have a player that's boom or bust, personality and locker room presence means a lot. And I've heard the same things you have, that he is just a great kid in general.
Right. And so that's the kind of guy you want to have near your program. That's the kind of guy that scouts gravitate toward. Um, they want a guy who's going to be good with the media. They want a guy who's going to be good with their teammates. I mean, you don't want a guy who's going to sit in the locker room and be reserved, not talking to anybody, not going out, not hyping his team up. And Clavon Chase is the kind of guy that's going to do that. And so um, I don't want to totally agree with you saying that he's going too high, but do I think that he should go ahead of Grant Delpit or Patrick Queen? No. Talent wise, no.
A,
Now, if
a,
we take his personality into if we take that into consideration, then maybe. But it's come on, it's Grant Delpit and Patrick Quinn. How do you go above them?
well,
It's
like
tough.
Patrick Queen, based on all the mock drafts that I've seen and everything, a lot of people have him going very late first round or even fall into the second round.
That's a value. That's a
I
value pick.
Yeah, I have him going 24th right now to the Saints.
Please, please, someone make that happen. Good
uh,
God,
if,
someone make that happen.
if you guys have not checked out the mock draft, the bluebloodspod.com, first article on there, check it out. It's just a first round mock draft. And while we're talking about it, I think an underrated person who I have in my first round mock draft, and I've not found many that have him, but I think he, to me, behind Delpit, is the best safety in the draft, and really and truly is might be better than Grant Delpit, and that's Anton Winfield Jr. from Minnesota. I think
Yeah,
this dude is okay. So is Grant Delpit raw talent is the best safety in the draft, but Winfield is probably the most versatile secondary prospect in the draft. I mean, he can play corner, he can play free safety, strong safety. It does not matter. I mean, he can play both sides. He can play any position in the secondary on defense, and he can step down into the box and make big hits, make tackles. And for me, he's the closest thing to Minka Fitzpatrick that I've seen in a long. It's since Minka Fitzpatrick. I mean, physical, excellent ball skills, and I think he's going to fill. I have him going to the Seahawks late in the first round. I think he's going to fill the gap that Earl Thomas has left for that team.
yeah, I can definitely see it. I think that uh, I don't want to keep saying I agree with you, but you're making a lot of good points right now, Zach.
Hey, you know what? I'm gonna crowd myself here. I literally just I'm gonna crown myself the NFL expert of the Blue Bloods for right now. Until Brandon gets on his stuff and gets him a mock draft out there, I'm taking the crown. I'm taking the title. Blue Bloods NFL expert Zach McKinnell right here.
Yeah, whatever.
So we're gonna go ahead, move on to our final segment. It's gonna be a little off topic, but we're gonna make it work for you guys. And we named this segment March Sadness. And you know, we decided that we're going to cover one of the biggest just college sports stories, and I don't know about you, Brandon, recent memory for me. Uh, and HBO released their documentary highlighting the famous NCAA basketball, Adidas, etc. scandal from the 2017-2018 year this week. And in case you have not heard about this case, agents, consultants from mainly Adidas were paying college assistant coaches and head coaches cash to steer big time players to their agency brand once they turn pro. This either made the coaches a lot of money and or was given to big time recruits to come to their program. Multiple people been arrested all across the country. The FBI did a big investigation, got way involved. If the FBI is involved, got to be somewhat serious. Big names across the country were caught up in this, and HBO's documentary made headlines this week due to the wiretap recordings of LSU head coach Will Wade talking to agent Chris Dawkins about how he can offer a recruit more money than the NBA league minimum or the G League can, and complains that a recruit, Javonte Smart, who is now an LSU player, would not accept a good offer because it leaned too much toward his family and that he was tired of his blank. We're a clean podcast, can't say it, and that he's made simpler deals for lesser talented players. Brandon, how bad of a look is this for LSU NCAA basketball? What do you make of this whole scandal? What's going on right now? And why do you think this could have far-reaching effects into football? And why have we not seen a scandal like this hit college football outside of maybe SMU paying players?
Well, if you want my initial thoughts on this, what I would say it's overblown. Um, and if you want to know my true thoughts, go ahead and visit www.tigerdroppings.com, where I agree 1,000,000% with everybody on there. Um, I've called this place the depths of humanity, the place where dreams go to die, things like that. And so after I'm done speaking my mind on this issue, I'm going to take a moment and read to you a few of the responses to what was shown on HBO on Tuesday night. But first, dude, come on. I mean, this was investigated over a year ago. He was found not guilty. I mean, it's one of those things. They didn't find enough evidence to indict him on anything. Um, and when I texted you earlier, and I, I'm not gonna go too deep into this. Obviously, I don't know all the details. I did watch it. It was very interesting. I wanted to hear it uncensored because we did hear it censored. About a year and a month ago, about 13 months ago on ESPN on Sports Center, they played these recordings. So this is one of those things where I think that due to the outbreak of this virus, due to the fact that we don't have any sports, this is what sports fans are leaning on. This is what they want to shift their focus to. Is this investigation again? I mean, the investigation's over. They played this recording a year ago, and we didn't make this big deal about it then. Why is it coming back up now? I get it's the HBO special; they re-highlighted it, but why is it coming back stronger than before? Do I think it's a problem? Yeah, obviously, I think it's a problem. I don't think that coaches should be swaying anybody to go anywhere. I think it's a violation if they're found guilty. Did the recording sound damning? Yes, it did. It sounded pretty bad. How he wasn't indicted, don't know. Not my job to indict him. Not my job to prosecute him. It's my job to talk about it. So here I am. How do I think it's going to impact college football? I think that college football is going to try their best to steer clear of anything to do with this type of ordeal, which I don't think is a big deal anyway. I mean, what kind of athletes do we see going to the NFL that are signing these shoe deals? Not a lot. I mean, we have some obviously, but what football player's signature shoe do you have, Zach? I
Not a
mean, I
single
own.
one.
I mean, so I'd say I have Jordans. I've had LeBrons. I've had Hardens. I've had all these shoes. I've had all these sneakers. I haven't had a single football player sneaker ever. I don't think. I didn't even have the Bo Jacksons. Um, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, especially not the exact case. There may be a scandal in the future in college football about players being paid. Like SMU was. Um, But with these new NCAA regulations where players can be paid for their likenesses, not necessarily by the institution itself, but by I guess I guess other entities, it's going to be a lot harder to prosecute these players now. So I don't think the college football has a lot to worry about regarding this anyway.
No, definitely not. And I mean, I guess to start out with this in specific scandal, I think I think it might be overlooked on what I mean, yes, some people might have heard the recording. The recording HBO release, they said that is in full, and the one that has been released wasn't the exact one, and this is like the true one, this is the final one, and I really think the NCAA at this point to make it go away is going to come down harsh on some programs, man. I mean, what like yes, there's been some programs who have already had some stuff. I know Auburn set two players just to head off the NCAA. I know Kansas did the same thing. I know Arizona did pretty much the same thing and let some players go. But uh, I know LSU. I mean, outside of Shaquille O'Neal, Brandon. I mean, and Pistol Pete. I mean, LSU hasn't been really a powerhouse basketball program, but I think the NCAA is going to try to make
Ben
an
Simmons,
example.
Tremont Waters,
Yeah, but they're not winning natties or getting to the tournament. I mean, Ben Simmons didn't even make the tournament.
whatever.
I mean,
Tremont
Shaquille
Waters did.
O'Neal. I mean, yeah, he made the second round.
No, he made. I thought it was the Sweet 16 last year.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, he did. He did. Okay. Ben Simmons didn't make the tournament, but I mean, Shaquille O'Neal had you guys like set. Pistol Pete, probably one of the greatest college basketball players of all time. That's another podcast. Anyway, um, I think the way that he was talking though about like when they caught him on tape talking about a player that currently plays for LSU. Smart's off to the NBA this year, I believe, right, Brandon? He declared.
Yeah, he was a
Yeah,
senior.
yeah. So he's off to the draft. But the fact they got their coach on tape talking about a player and how he was frustrated with him that he wouldn't accept the offer he gave him, and that crappier players were easier to work with, and etc. I think that's a horrible, horrible look moving forward for Will Wade. I mean, how do you go into players' houses and look their parents in the eye and they're like, well, what are you saying behind our backs now? I mean,
Right.
and they literally have him on tape saying that like he paid Javante Smart, he paid other players. Well, who are those other players? That's going to come out eventually. The FBI knows. The NCAA knows, and the NCAA has not announced punishments for programs caught up in this yet. And they already said programs who did not self-impose penalties are going to get stiffer penalties, and those involved the most are going to get the worst. And the ones that I've been reading are involved in the most now are Arizona, Kansas, and LSU. Those are the three programs that did the least amount after they got caught up in this and have had the most involved in this. I mean, you saw a player from Kansas who got caught up in this who, as soon as he got a chance to come back, almost hit a kid in the head with a stool in a brawl. I mean, LSU didn't sit anybody. Will Wade shows no remorse for this. Arizona's coach pretty much went as far as saying that like it's stupid. I mean, Arizona's
I
coach
don't.
probably handled this the worst. I mean, I'm not coming for him, but like Arizona's coach handled this worse than like I think anyone in the world could have, you know. And the argument that I'm hearing from a lot of LSU people and just people in general about the scandal is that the NCAA got what they deserve because they're taking advantage of kids even worse. And I want to address that because that's not true. One, I think what makes this scandal so bad is not paying the players. I don't think that's what the problem is. The problem is that these agents and agency and people who work for these agencies like Adidas are almost scamming or trying to bribe people to join prematurely or lock these kids into a contract that they can't get back out of. And the kids can't get out of it because if they don't do it, then if this isn't blown up, they get caught. You don't think that Adidas person is going to go straight to the NCAA and report that kid? I think the fact
Yeah,
that they were bribing kids to do something almost against their will is really, really it's down deep is what the problem with this is. This isn't just coaches or assistants paying players to come to their program. It's, hey, come to our program and you have to sign with Adidas in 2-3 years. You have to sign with agent X over there. I think that's where it got out of hand, and that's why the FBI and all these outside entities had to get involved.
Yeah, man, I don't know. It's definitely a bad situation. And you mentioned that Will Wade shows no remorse. I don't know about that. He did come out and say that he's going to forfeit that $250,000 performance bonus he got from last season. And also, he came out and mentioned that he agreed not to sue the university if he's fired with cause over this, if he's found guilty. So I think there is some remorse there. I think that if there was no remorse, he wouldn't have forfeited that money, and he probably wouldn't have come out and said that uh, he wasn't going to sue the university if he was fired. Which, in the coming days, weeks, months, we'll see how that is handled.
Yeah, it's a bad optics
But
look though that this is like it's not a bad optics look that it was released. It's a bad look that it was released at the time it did because there is literally nothing else to focus on for the NCAA.
right. So let's go ahead and dig deep into the depths of Tiger droppings, everybody's favorite place in the world. I feel like this might as well be its own segment because this is about to get wild. Um, so let's go ahead and read some of these comments, some of these topics here. This first topic, it just reads, in case anyone missed the Will Wade audio last night, it was posted today, it was posted this morning. He drops a link to the audio and then says, really nothing we didn't already know. I really don't think the whole theme or mood of the film was to criticize NCAA coaches as much as the NCAA itself. The last part of the film featured Dawkins talking about how he looked at coaches who paid players as good people and ones who did not as not good people. I don't know because I watched it. And that's not really how it seemed to me. Zach, did you watch this last night?
I didn't watch the whole thing. I've watched like bits and pieces of it, but I've not seen the entirety of like the show they air Tuesday.
Yeah, and then in response to that, someone says, "To me, the documentary perspective was to show how incompetent the FBI was in this investigation."
That's a bold claim, bro.
Zach, that's not the only time someone says that. Later on a different topic, someone says, "How embarrassed should the FBI be if any of the scheme is accurate?" Um, I don't. There's a lot of deflection going on Tiger droppings today. Uh, I don't know. It's either that or like, how does Will Wade not get fired, and then 1,000 downvotes on that, and then people saying he won't be fired. We love Will Wade. He won't be fired. So you gotta love the LSU fans on this forum. It's beautiful. Everything about it's beautiful. Um, I don't know. It's just some of these are really funny. They got 3 convictions in connection with this case. FBI doesn't care about the NCAA's amateurism bylaws. That's not their concern, and it was not within their scope. And then this guy replies to that and says, "Oh, so you're okay with the money they stole?" This basically creates the con, then charges people that went along with them. It's just, to me, there's a lot of deflecting, a lot of beating around the bush, and a lot of, oh, LSU can't be at fault here. Will Wade is an angel, and everyone keeps calling him a gangsta because I think it's because Rothstein calls him American gangster after every single time that he wins a game. So I don't really understand Tiger droppings. I never have. Zach, you know that. I actually don't know that anyone could ever understand Tiger droppings, but this has been my report from TigerDroppings.com.
Yeah, so we're gonna move more toward like football here. So there was an interesting point like brought up about why, how is football going to be caught up in this? How is this going to change football? And the reason that Joel Klatt from Fox Sports gave is that in football there would have to be so much money involved because one player can't win you a national championship. He said this became so big in college basketball because the price of he said goods. I don't like that word because goods means players here. And because like the demand for a good player is so much higher in college basketball than it is football. Because in football, you got 22 people out there on the field, and with the rotations, there's probably close to 36 ish players that rotate in and out of a game and that make a big impact. You know, if Joe Burrow doesn't have Justin Jefferson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the best offensive line in the country, Joe Burrow isn't winning the Heisman or winning the national championship. But in basketball, when there's only 5 players out there, one good player can really change the trajectory of that team. I mean, look at let's just say NBA. You put LeBron James on any team, that team's going to the finals, or at least the conference finals. In college
Yeah, just look at the
basketball,
Lakers last year.
okay, fair enough. But to be fair, like that was a different story. But I mean, in college basketball, you see it's a star-driven league, and there's more money to go around. And having a better player at an important position in basketball means more than football. And that was their argument: is that the way basketball set up, especially college basketball with the ones and dones, is you got 1 year to get it right. It's not like football where you at least get 3 years to develop these players. You need a good player immediately to get you to the national championship. So competing for these high level players for 1 to 2 years is much more important, which drove this I guess scandal in college basketball, and that's why we'll never see one in college football. Your thoughts?
Um, I don't know, and I'm just going to reiterate with what I said earlier. I don't know that we could see anything with this capacity in college football. Um, unless it's just, I don't know. It's tough. I think this is kind of a really unique situation, um, in that it is unique to basketball because basketball is this type of, uh, like you said, like one man can really lead the charge in college basketball, even in professional basketball. So I think it would be very difficult to see the same type of thing happen in college football.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was his point. It'd be really hard to have this happen in college football because of the large amounts of recruits and different factors that would play in. I mean, for me, I think the talent gap when you have a top recruit in basketball is a way bigger than football. I mean, what there's 32 5-star recruits in football every year is what 247 aims
Right.
for, but there's really probably hundreds of recruits that make a significant impact movie somewhere within their 3 to 4 years at that program. Basketball, not the case. I mean, if you have a player that's immediately impactful, he's not staying for more than 2 years unless a significant injury comes, and then you don't even get that benefit, you know, moving forward in that season. So I get the point. I never would imagine this would happen in college football. I think paying the players though, that will pop up again. It's due. It's really, really due, in my opinion. I think it's coming. The NCAA is bored, guys. The NCAA is headhunting out there for something to do with no sports. I mean, I think this scandal is really, really unique, and I don't think we'll ever see a scandal like this ever again in sports in general. I think once the FBI gets involved, it gets outrageous, in my opinion. And
Oh, for sure.
the fact that it got so serious that the FBI had to take time to step in and investigate, and there were companies and people taking advantage of all kind of kids and just putting them in situations that they couldn't succeed in. I mean, there's countless players that lost playing time and college careers and all just their pride and their trustworthiness. And I really think it negatively affected a lot of people around, college sports. And I hate that. But
Yeah,
we're going
absolutely.
we're sorry to end up on like a somber note, but that's the end of this episode. We gave y'all an extended episode, man, over an hour of content to last y'all till Monday. We'll be back Monday with more college football content, maybe some just random sports content like we gave you today. But check us out on social media at the underscore blue bloods on Instagram, at the underscore blue bloods on Twitter, at the blue bloods pod on Facebook. YouTube is up. Check out the blue bloods. All our most recent episodes, interviews are up. This episode will be up on YouTube. So if you can't find us on streaming platforms, go check us out on YouTube. We got full episodes there for you guys. The bluebloodspod.com. All the links to everywhere we're available is on there. Articles, mock draft, check it all out. We'll be bringing you guys more of that very, very soon. But keep listening, subscribing, rate the podcast wherever y'all can. Keep listening. We'll keep coming out with content. But for right now, we out.